Those were the words written on a small sheet of Admiralty paper and left beneath a pile of stones in the Canadian Arctic. The message was dated May 1847. According to the men who wrote it, the Franklin expedition was safe. 2 Royal Navy ships, Erebus and Terror, were still locked in the ice, but the expedition had not yet reported a disaster. Sir John Franklin remained in command. The note ended with the calm language of an official record. All well. But someone returned to that same sheet of paper 11 months later. A second message was written around its margins. This time, the ships had been abandoned. Franklin was dead. 23 other men had also died, and the remaining survivors were preparing to leave the safety of their vessels and walk south across the Arctic. No confirmed written message from the expedition would ever follow. In May 1845, HMS Erebus and HMS Terror left England in search of the Northwest Passage, a navigable route through the Arctic that could connect the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. The expedition was led by Sir John Franklin, an experienced naval officer who had already taken part in several Arctic journeys. Francis Crozier commanded Terror and served as second in command. James Fitzjames commanded Erebus under Franklin. There were 129 officers and men aboard the 2 ships when the expedition continued into the Arctic. They were not sailing in ordinary wooden vessels. Erebus and Terror had originally been built as bomb ships, designed with strong hulls capable of withstanding the recoil of heavy mortars. Both had already served in polar waters. For the Franklin expedition, they were reinforced again, fitted with auxiliary steam engines, and stocked for a voyage expected to last several years. The expedition carried preserved food, scientific instruments, books, and equipment. The ships had heated living spaces. Their crews included experienced sailors, officers, engineers, surgeons, and ice masters. This was not intended to be a journey into the unknown, with no means of survival. It was one of the best-equipped Arctic expeditions Britain had ever sent. The 2 ships were last seen by European whalers in Baffin Bay in August 1845. After that, they disappeared from direct contact with the outside world. Their first winter was spent at Beechey Island. 3 members of the crew died there and were buried in the frozen ground. When the ice opened, the ships continued south and west. Then, in September 1846, Erebus and Terror became trapped in the ice near King William Island. Being frozen in for a winter was not automatically a disaster. Arctic expeditions expected periods when the sea became impassable. The ships could serve as shelters until warmer weather broke the ice apart. But the ice did not release them. The vessels remained trapped through the winter of 1846 and into the following year. On the 28th of May, 1847, a small party reached a stone cairn on King William Island. Lieutenant Graham Gore and another officer deposited a standard naval form inside it. The printed paper had been designed for expeditions. It allowed explorers to record their position, dates, and progress, then leave the message somewhere another party might find it. The handwriting on the form stated that Erebus and Terror had wintered at Beechey Island in 1845 and 1846. It reported that the ships had been trapped since September 1846. Then came the words that would later seem impossible. All well. Sir John Franklin was still listed as commanding the expedition. The party that deposited the note could not know how strange those words would appear after the paper was found. They also could not know that Franklin would die only 2 weeks later, on the 11th of June, 1847. The circumstances of his death remain uncertain. Command of the expedition passed to Francis Crozier. Another winter arrived. The ships remained caught in the ice. Month after month, Erebus and Terror drifted slowly with the frozen sea, while their crews waited for a release that did not come. The surviving record does not provide a daily account of what happened aboard the ships. There is no complete journal describing the decline of the expedition. There is no confirmed sequence explaining every illness, every decision, or every death. Later evidence has produced several possible contributing factors, including disease, malnutrition, exhaustion, and the extreme Arctic environment. But no single explanation can account with certainty for everything that happened. What is known comes largely from one sheet of paper. By April 1848, the situation had changed beyond recognition. The two ships had been trapped for more than a year and a half. On the 22nd of April, the survivors abandoned them. 4 days later, Crozier and Fitzjames reached the same area where Graham Gore's party had left the earlier message. They recovered the form and added a second report around its edges. The contrast between the two entries is severe. The first message described the expedition as well. The second reported that Erebus and Terror had been deserted. It stated that the ships had been trapped in the ice since September 1846. It recorded the death of Sir John Franklin. It also reported that 9 officers and 15 men had died. 105 survivors remained. They had landed on King William Island under the command of Francis Crozier, and they intended to begin traveling toward the Back River, then commonly called Back's Fish River. The wording was official and restrained. There was no farewell, no description of fear, no request addressed to a particular rescuer, no explanation of what the men expected to find at the end of their journey, only names, dates, deaths, and a direction of travel. The note was returned to the cairn. Then the survivors moved south. That is where the expedition's confirmed written voice ends. What happened after the men left the ships can only be reconstructed from physical evidence, later search expeditions, and Inuit testimony. The planned route was extraordinarily difficult. The survivors had to move across sea ice and exposed land while carrying supplies. They were already weakened after 2 winters aboard trapped ships. Their destination lay far to the south. Search parties would later discover human remains, equipment, and abandoned objects along the route. Inuit witnesses preserved accounts of groups of foreign men traveling through the region, of encounters with exhausted survivors, and of a ship seen in a different location from where the Royal Navy expected to find it. These oral histories were not merely background to the mystery. They became essential evidence. But in Britain, no one yet knew that the ships had been abandoned. No one had received the message. Franklin's expedition had vanished into a communications gap that stretched across thousands of miles. When the ships failed to return, concern gradually became alarm. The Admiralty, private sponsors, and Franklin's wife, Jane Franklin, supported a long series of searches. Expeditions entered the Arctic from different directions. They searched coastlines, islands, and channels. They found the graves at Beechy Island and evidence of the expedition's first winter. But the crucial message remained under the stones. Years passed. The men who had written it were gone. The people searching for them did not yet know where they had gone, when the ships had been abandoned, or when Franklin had died. The message existed, but it had no receiver. Not until April 1859. More than a decade after Crozier and Fitzjames added their final report, Lieutenant William Hobson reached the cairn during an expedition led by Francis Leopold McClintock. Inside, he found the paper. The message could no longer help the men who had left it, could not direct a rescue party toward living survivors. Instead, it became evidence. For the first time, searchers had a written record from the expedition explaining that Franklin had died. The ships had been abandoned, and the surviving men had attempted to travel south. The note answered several questions, but it also created new ones. Why had no further written records been found? How far had the survivors traveled? Did any of them return to the ships? Why were the wrecks later found far from the position where the men had abandoned them? The paper did not solve the Franklin mystery. It defined its final confirmed boundary. Before the note, there were ships, officers, and plans. After it, there were scattered objects, human remains, and stories preserved by the people who lived in the region. For generations, searches continued. Inuit knowledge repeatedly pointed toward areas connected to the missing vessels. Modern researchers combined those accounts with archaeology, sonar, and historical records. In 2014, the wreck of HMS Erebus was discovered. 2 years later, HMS Terror was found in Terror Bay. Both ships were remarkably well preserved in the cold Arctic water. Their discovery did not replace the Victory Point note. It gave the message a new context. The ships described as abandoned in April 1848 were no longer missing. They had become protected archaeological sites, jointly managed with Inuit participation. Objects recovered from the wrecks continue to provide evidence about life aboard the expedition. But the final fate of every man remains unknown. The original Victory Point note survives today in the collection of the National Maritime Museum in Greenwich. It is a single sheet of paper, damaged by time, and marked by 2 moments separated by 11 months. The first was written while the expedition still believed it could continue. The second was written after its commander had died. Its ships had failed to escape the ice, and its survivors had chosen to leave them behind. The note was not intended to become a final message. It was a routine expedition record, placed where another traveler might eventually discover it. That was the system. Leave a position, record a date, state what had happened, then continue the journey. But no one from the Franklin expedition returned to update it again. The first entry said that all was well. The second said the ships were empty. And after that, the page remained silent.